Hey everybody, Pete with Optics for Birding here again. Today I'm really excited to show you a direct comparison between my two favorite binoculars on the market. We're going to be looking at the Zeiss Victory SF binocular versus the Swarovski NL Pure. We're going to be looking specifically at the 8x42s, and conceptually this comparison is going to apply to the 10x42 as well. Again, just to reiterate for people that don't quite understand binoculars as well, the 8x42 and 10x42 within a given manufacturer are going to be the exact same size. So the 10x42 and 8x42 Victory SF are going to look the same. They're going to feel the same in your hands. It's really only when you're looking through them that they're going to be different. The same thing would apply to the Swarovski NL Pure 8x42 and 10x42. So again, I've got the 8x42s in front of me here, but conceptually a lot of this stuff is going to apply to the 10x42s as well. So I do want to give a quick disclaimer. I am going to be inserting a lot of my opinions in here. I am going to be as objective as I can be, but at the end of the day, binoculars are a very personal piece of equipment. You should always, 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 if you can, do your own research, go try them in person, borrow a friend's if they're nice enough to let you look through theirs, and just see for yourself which one you like more. Because at the end of the day, personal preference is going to be the driving factor as far as which one you pick and which one you like more. But I'm going to do my best to boil down the differences for you. So without further ado, let's get into it. Zeiss Victory SF, Swarovski NL Pure. Let's do it. All right, so before I talk about any of the technology, any of the glass quality, any of the lens coatings, any of that fancy stuff, I'm going to steal what Rich Moncrief at Zeiss said in a presentation once, which is the first thing that you do with a pair of binoculars is you pick it up. You don't look through it first. You're not putting your eye down to the binoculars and then picking them up in your hands. First thing you're going to do is grip them. So that actually is one of the biggest differences between these, is how they feel in your hand. The Victory SF on paper is about 27.5 ounces, not including any lens covers. With the Swarovski, it's a little bit closer to 30 ounces, and these rubber lens caps add about a ½ ounce per lens cap. So it's not going to make a discernible difference in practice. But what a lot of people do report is that the NLs feel a little bit heavier in your hands. I agree with that. It's not a massive difference, but the amount that a binocular weighs on paper can be really, really different from how it actually feels in your hand. And let's start with the NL Pure. So a lot of people, the first thing they notice with this is that little trimmed down middle section. Without going into too much detail, Swarovski just got creative with the prism design to accomplish that. So it feels really natural to hold because you don't have a big barrel to grab onto. And because of that, it can feel a lot lighter than the published weight. It can feel a lot easier to hold for a longer period of time than other like tubular binoculars. So that's the first distinction I wanted to make. With the Zeiss, on the other hand, this is not something I'm going to be able to illustrate super well in the video, but if you ever hold these, you'll know what I'm talking about. They call this the ErgoBalance concept because it's a very ergonomic way of balancing the binocular, go figure. Essentially, when you hold the binoculars up to your eyes, a lot of the weight is concentrated at the back end of the binocular, so you get a much lighter feeling in your hand. Your eye sockets end up doing some of the heavy lifting, and believe me, it feels a lot lighter than 27 or 28 ounces in your hands when you're holding them up. Of course, when they're dangling around your neck, that's not going to make much of a difference. But just know that when you're looking through them, which is when, obviously the weight counts the most and what determines how tired you're going to get when you're holding them, that is one of the main reasons that people choose these. It's one of the things that makes them a little bit pricier than their lower quality lines. And once again, that's called the ErgoBalance concept. Basically, I think that these are two of the best ergonomic binoculars that we sell. Whether you're talking about the Swarovski or the Zeiss, you got a really ergonomic feeling in your hand. The idea with any pair of binoculars that I always emphasize is you want it to feel like an extension of your eyes and an extension of your hands. I think both of these do that phenomenally well. I would be thrilled with either one. And, at the end of the day, it just comes down to which one you prefer to hold in your hands. So some people pick the Swarovski, some people pick the Zeiss, totally up to you. But one thing that both of them have in common is the smoothness of the focus wheel. That is the part of the binocular that you're going to be touching more than anything else. It's, especially on like a really cold day where your hands are already stiff, having a focus wheel that cooperates with you, that's responsive, that lets you transition between near and far distances really easily is extremely important. And, when you're spending this much money on a binocular, whether it's, around 3,000 or around 3,500, I think you have every right to be as picky as you want to be. And when it comes to that focus wheel, you never, ever want that to get in your way. So the smoothness of the focus wheel, I would say, was just about the same with either one. If anything, I'm going to give a slight edge to the Zeiss because that is what it's named for. The name Victory SF means smart focus. The idea was just to give people a focus wheel that's really quick and is really easy to turn so that they can get any bird on target in a heartbeat. So as far as, again, I just want to emphasize this, the ease at which you can turn the focus wheel, it's pretty much the same. In fact, it might be easier on the Swarovski, but it's a little bit faster on the Zeiss, and some people prefer that. Totally up to you whether or not you think that difference is really going to make a difference in practice for you. But I'd say probably on the focus wheel specifically, I'd give a slight edge to the Zeiss. When it comes to how it fits in my hand, I think I like the Swarovski just a little bit more, but we have had some people comment they just don't like how this little trimmed down midsection feels. Again, something that you're going to have to determine for yourself when you hold them side by side, but that is, the main reason that Swarovski made them this way is because there is a pressure point in people's hands right at the little groove. Whether or not that affects you is going to depend on how long you're holding the binoculars and how comfortable they are. So that was one of the ideas that Swarovski had in mind when they made these, is that they wanted to alleviate the pressure on that pressure point as much as possible so that you wouldn't experience that when you're, doing a survey for hours at a time, or, doing some other task that just requires you to hold them for a long period of time. All right, so now that we've discussed most of the ergonomic differences, how they feel in your hand, how they focus, all that sort of stuff, usually when people are comparing two binoculars at the same price point, ergonomics are going to take precedence over the image quality, because the image quality is going to be so fantastic in both. They're both using the best optical technology that they have available to them. They're not cutting any corners. So again, I'd be thrilled with either one of these. They both have an amazing image. But let's talk about the specific differences in the image quality that some people point out when they're doing their research. So first things first, the field of view, technically the edge goes to the Swarovski, because on paper, and again, this is just the 8x42 models, but on paper, the 8x42 has a 477-foot field of view at 1,000 yards, and on the Zeiss, it's 444 feet. That might sound like a noticeable difference. You think, oh, it's 33 feet or whatever, but you're measuring that at 1,000 yards. And I've never understood why that is how we measure field of view, because that's not a realistic viewing distance for most people, especially in a birding setting. If you're hunting and you're looking at deer that are 1,000 yards away, that's a different story. But take the field of view at 100 yards, for example. If your field of view difference is 33 feet at 1,000 yards, divide that all by 10, you're only looking at a 3.3-foot difference at 100 yards. And if you imagine yourself in the end zone of a football field, you look to the other end, would you really be able to notice if the end zone got 3.3 feet wider? Maybe you got better eyes than I do, but for the vast majority of us muggles, we're not going to be able to notice that, right? So even though that is one of the first things that people notice, it's one of the things that is talked about a lot, I don't really see a difference in the field of view in practice. So I wanted to touch on that first. Secondly, there is another spec that I think makes a somewhat of a real difference, which is the light transmission. Now, light transmission is something that can be pretty misunderstood. It's not really clear how the different manufacturers measure light transmission, whether they're looking at the whole visible light spectrum, or they're looking at the wavelength that gets through the binocular the most. So I don't like to emphasize it too much, but I will say on paper, the Victory SF has 92% light transmission, the Swarovski has 91. I have done a low light comparison between the two. I would say that, if I really, really look for it, I can notice a slight edge in the Zeiss when it comes to light transmission, but it's very rare for that difference to actually come into play unless you're doing a lot of low light observation. So you just have to ask yourself how important that is to you. But I would say, if you want me to make that decision for you myself, the Zeiss is slightly better in low light, but the Swarovski is still fantastic. Another slight difference when it comes to the image is going to be the close focusing distance. And again, this is something that not everybody really cares about. For a lot of birders, they don't really ever need to use their binoculars to focus closer than about 10 feet or so. And especially in the hunting community and astronomy community, you're looking at things that are really far away. So close focus just doesn't matter. But for those of us that like to look at insects, that like to look at hummingbirds a lot, or reptiles that come scurrying right by your feet, that kind of thing, close focus can matter. So on the Zeiss, the tabulated close focusing distance is about 4.9 feet. On the Swarovski, you're looking more at about 6.5. So, in some cases, you might just have to back up 1.5 feet with the Swarovski, whereas the Zeiss, you'd be able to stay right there. Whether or not that 1.5 feet or so really makes a difference is up to you. But I'm trying to highlight the differences here to be as thorough as possible. All right, so those are most of the important differences when it comes to the image quality. There is one similarity that I do want to highlight as well, which is that they both have 18 millimeters of eye relief. So that should mean for any person that's trying to get the most eye relief that they can get, that's more than enough for most folks. But the key thing to note here is that there's no advantage of using one or the other when it comes to giving your eye the relief that it needs to, either get a nice clean view with glasses on, or if you have really deep eye sockets, that kind of thing. They both have plenty of eye relief for that. It's very rare for people to need more than that, in my experience. Like 20 millimeters of eye relief is what a lot of people shoot for, but it can actually be counterproductive in that it gives you the shadows in the field of view that are associated with a long eye relief binocular. So if you want to learn more about that, we have a separate video, and we'll link that in the notes. But if you are at this stage of the game and you've decided that you want to get the last pair of binoculars that you'll ever need, if you don't listen to anything else in this video, just let me reiterate one more time. It's going to come down to personal preference. I would absolutely recommend doing as much research as you can, talking to somebody who is used to using these binoculars, has tried them side by side, and ultimately, if you can try them in person yourself, that's the best thing to do. All right, so now that we're at this stage, the deciding factor can come down to one little accessory that you can get for the NL Pure that's not available on the Zeiss Victory SF, and I'm going to show you that right now. So here is the forehead rest that Swarovski made for the NL Pure when it was released. They came out at the same time. It is something that you have to buy separately, like I said, but I am amazed that anybody gets the NL Pure without this, because I just think it makes such a big difference. So how does this work? Well, you just insert it right between the eyepieces. And as the name implies, when you hold up the binocular, no matter who you are, even if you have the steadiest hands in the world, even if you're really calm and not breathing hard or any of that, if you're anywhere from that to somebody with Parkinson's that has a really severe tremor in your hands, there's going to be some wobble in the binoculars, right? So anything that we can do to stabilize the binocular is good. With any normal pair of binocular, you always want to have as much of your hand underneath the binocular as possible. You want to bring your elbows in. You want to get as much of a firm base as you can just to keep it from moving. But what the forehead rest does that nothing else does is, when you've got the binoculars on your eye sockets, you roll it out just like a focus wheel, and it gives you an extra little anchor point to keep the binoculars from moving as much. And I really do think it makes a world of difference. And if you're the type of person that would find that useful, that could make the decision for you right away. I mean, it's not something that is like putting the binocular on a tripod by any means. I really think that it stabilizes the binocular maybe like 20 or 30%. It's not night and day, but for a lot of people, especially if you wear glasses, because with glasses on, you don't have the eye sockets doing some of that stabilization for you. You've just got your eye cups floating around on your lenses. That forehead rest can make an even bigger difference than if you're not wearing glasses. So what I've noticed is that we have a lot of people that try it in the store. Some people think it makes all the difference in the world. There are some people that just hate having something against their forehead, and no harm, no foul. If you want the binocular without it, you don't have to buy it. But that is something that I really want to emphasize, because it really is the deciding factor for a lot of people that try these back and forth, and they're like, yeah, they both feel perfect in my hand. They both look beautiful. They both have a nice, comfortable view, a nice wide field of view, beautiful glass quality. But if you're already investing this much, the little add-on that could make the view, perfect for you versus just really good, it might make you go to the Swarovski instead. So that could be the nail in the coffin. On the other hand, there are plenty of people, like I said, that don't like that. And if that's the case, and you're just comparing the binoculars without that on there, really it does come down to personal preference as far as how the view looks and how they feel in your hand. So going back to the Victory SF for a little bit, there are plenty of people that I've seen that love to have the larger tube, even though that might seem counterintuitive. They just feel like they can get a firmer grasp on the binoculars, they can hold it steadier because of that. So again, I think I've made my point now. It comes down to the individual preferences that you have. If you do have a lot of questions that I haven't answered in this video, I really do encourage you to call us. You can get a hold of us at 877-674-2473, and I'd love to have a one-on-one discussion with you and see if I can, dispel some of the misinformation you might have seen online about these, because at the end of the day, they're both phenomenal. I'd be thrilled with either one. Most of the people that come into the store will be thrilled with either one. It's just a matter of dialing it in for your needs as best as you can. So if you didn't have the opportunity to call us, you can always reach out to us on social media if that's how you're seeing this. And of course, as always, there's no shortage of information on our website. Please visit www.opticsforbirding.com for more. You can read about these for hours at a time and probably still not know which one is better for you. But please keep watching these videos, keep coming back to us, keep calling us. We'd love to answer these questions. So thanks again for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.